Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and that you take time to listen into the podcast. I really appreciate you. I say it all the time and I will continue to say it. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you take your time to listen to the podcast and you helped us become in the top 10% of all podcasts according to Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. And if you're really enjoying the podcast, go over, rate, review, subscribe, and that'll help us keep it going. All right. Now, today I'm talking with Kimberly Best. Now, I already want to say 10 things about that Best last name, but I'm going to try to stay focused. But let me say this, everyone. So far, in my opinion, she's one of the best. Okay. All right. So here, let me tell you about Kimberly Best. First, let me say she's the author of the book, How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. And she is a speaker and trainer on the topics of conflict management, dispute resolution processes, life transitions, and how to make difficult decisions, including end-of-life issues. Kim is passionate about helping others resolve conflicts in productive ways using all kinds of techniques and resources that she'll tell us about. She believes that having challenging conversations in a safe, non-blame space can promote better problem solving and increase emotional connection. I mean, she has a whole page of accolades, which you could see in the show notes. But let me just add here, she is the proud mother of 5 grown children and the grandmother of 4 lively little ones. Welcome, Kimberly Best.
Oh, I'm really excited to be here and very nice to meet you. And I just want to say real quick, because I know we're on audio and your listeners can't see you, you just radiate joy. I wish they could see you. You just glow. So I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. All right, so let's just jump right in. We were having such a hearty conversation beforehand, but let's start with, I kind of read some of your bio, your official introduction. Why don't you tell us in your own words, first who you are and then about the work you do. So anything about who you are and then the work you do.
Sure. You did most of it in an intro, but I spent the first decades of my life as a registered nurse. And I've worked in every intensive care unit, literally, that there is, because once you work in trauma, which was my next step, you get pulled to different intensive care units. And ultimately, I worked in the emergency department. Yeah, I did that, loved doing it, kind of got burnt out at one stage because, you really see people suffer. And so I went to graduate school in psychology. And truth is, I'm at the end of that going, this ER heart cannot, like psychology is like watching paint dry. I mean, for an ER nurse. Now I have a counselor, so no offense to counselors, but it's a slow process. So I went back into nursing, and then I went through a really, really bad divorce. And my brother, who's an educator, sent me an email. He said, have you ever heard of this thing called transformative mediation? Hofstra University was the host of that. Rick Bush founded that. And I read about it, and it offered an opportunity to have terribly hard conversations in a non-violent, non-blaming, problem-solving way. Oh, that's something I'd never heard of before. So I went to Hofstra and took a couple courses there, eventually went back to get my master's degree in conflict management. And, the things I learned starting with Hofstra was there is a huge toolbox full of tools that we just haven't learned about conflict. And I often say, if you think about what happened in your family of origin, when you were the source of conflict, that's probably what you learned about conflict, you know?
Oh,
Yeah. So we just haven't learned how to do this well. So then the book came into existence somewhere in the midst of that. It's a moment where my life went full circle between being with people when they die, which is to me the end of their story, is always looked like that. From the first person I saw die, the first woman I sat with, in my head I just envisioned the bookends coming together in a closing. And I sat there wondering, what secrets she had, like who did she love that nobody knew, because she's taking all this story with her. Decades later, I write a book that combines the story and the decisions around there, including leaving our story as our legacy.
that is so powerful. So
Yeah.
powerful. Okay, now I want to just
A lot to unpack there.
yeah, I want to unpack this a little bit and go back a little bit. Okay, so it sounds like your brother's recommendation to join the program set you on the path of doing this conflict resolution
Mhm.
work. Was there something before that? Now looking back, was there something before that that indicated that you would be, first of all, interested in that and suited to do it? And the reason why I asked the question because I feel like you are uniquely suited to do this work. And so I'm wondering if there's something early on that you've identified that
Wow.
connected you with that.
Probably, if I'm to go way back, I was raised in very, very high conflict. I don't know if you know of the Enneagram. Okay.
Yes.
So obviously I'm a peacemaker, a 9. And when you're raised in conflict, it's kind of excruciating if you're not the kind of person that can join in that. And then of course we see it all the time. For me, in my work that is emergency room and trauma, that compassion, right? Like that witness of human suffering, which is actually what I call it almost emergency room of the soul when people come in conflict, because what they show is so vulnerable, just like people who are injured and sick. I mean, that's just such a vulnerable time. So I really feel like learning to be present for people, and by fully present, in a non-judgmental way, to see them in that career, the nursing career, and then raising 5 kids, and all the conflict that goes with life. Yeah, I feel like it put me in a place where I am where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, I have a high respect for it because it's something that I think I would not be able to do. I just don't feel like I have the makeup. We all have different gifts. I mean, I did, side note, years
Mm.
ago, I worked as a social worker that investigated child abuse and neglect.
Ooh,
And so there's a level of conflict, needless to say, in that whole thing, and did that for over 5 years. My sense of compassion for people led me there, but the kind of, resolve that you need, I didn't
yeah.
have for that. So that's why I especially respect the work that you do. All right, so now let's talk about the book for a minute. The book, How to Live Forever, a guide to writing the final chapter of your life story. Tell us the premise of the book.
Yeah. So I feel like we're relatively or terribly purposeful about our lives up to a point. And backing up from that a little bit, I think the biggest lesson I learned from being in nursing, working with the intensity I did, is that we only have now.
Mm,
Every moment matters. Like nobody wakes up in the morning thinking they're going to go to the ER, or they're going to die, or something's going to happen, or a diagnosis. Yet it's part of life, you know? So, watching the haunting memory my nursing career is people who have not had discussions over what kind of health care and how much health care that they want. Because to keep people alive with no quality of life, when you're the person with the hands on that, it feels like torture, just to be honest. And we haven't had those discussions because very often people think we're not supposed to die, but we are, right?
yeah.
What we're supposed to do is live well And Atul Gawande, who wrote Being Mortal, which is an incredible book, he said something to the effect of, it's not about dying well, it's about living well all the way to the end. So I wanted to start those conversations because that part of our life, we don't know when it's coming. I lost a 5-year-old niece to a brainstem glioma. My son had a friend in high school that died of a certain type of cancer. I mean, things just happen. It's just life, you know?
Yeah.
So, the being in kind of the legal field in mediation right now, there's legal things to do to prepare. There's my passion, the healthcare side of things, to make informed decisions, to decide what quality of life you're willing to fight for, and when it's time to rally, for your best ending. Because really, surveys show that something like 85 to 90% of people don't want to die in a hospital; they want to be at home. Right? But we keep doing things to people who can't get better because they're dying. And we're not letting that story end well, it means there's a lot of regret. There's a lot of pain for not just the person who's dying, but for survivors. I talk to people who have had the planning and they lose their loved ones and they have peace, because they went out the way they wanted to. The rest of us who don't talk about it, we're guessing the whole time. So we're always, when we guess, we second guess. So we're always wondering, did I do what they wanted? Then, because I believe that our life is our story, the book talks about ways to leave your story as your legacy. Other studies showed that, a large percentage of people didn't want things willed to them like grandma's gnomes. They wanted to know the story of their past, of their ancestors. That story links the past with the future. It's a bridge, and we don't often build that bridge. Then I talk about the celebration of life. I had one client say, what happens at the end and in that funeral is how people will remember me. So I tell stories. I tell one about a woman who had a living celebration of life, which is a very, very, very cool. And then, because these conversations are difficult to have, using mediation as a tool for, bringing people to the table to have conversations that maybe we haven't had before.
Yeah, I mean, I could see so much value in having a book like this and a resource. You mentioned, well, we talked about how the turning point for you to go into the conflict resolution work with your brother, kind of recommending that to you. What was the catalyst for you to write the book? I mean, it sounds like you have a wealth of experience and expertise, but what was the catalyst that made you
Yeah.
write?
So, true story on that. I didn't think I was going to write a book. I have a friend who, I'm in Nashville, so the music business is a big deal. And she's older than me, and she's been in the music business, and she's kind of coaching me in how to start my own business and conflict. And she said, you need to make some kind of a pamphlet, a flyer. She's like, or a little booklet. She's like, you can have tons of blank pages in it. You just need something to give to people. And I was at a conference for counseling, and I met someone who was doing John Trent, out your way, kind of, who was had a topic called how to write a book or create a presentation. And I'm just, kind of beginning my career pretty much full circle, full time at that point. And so I took the course and I just started writing, and it just came. It just came. And it just kept coming, and it just kept coming. And all of a sudden there was a book there. It still boggles my mind. Like, it's still, because I'm like, I'm not an author. But the thing that still just drops my jaw is how it really does go full circle between, what I learned in nursing and what I've learned in conflict.
Yeah, yeah. So you were thinking, I'll write something because she said this is the way.
Yeah,
Right.
a page, just something with blank pages in between, because you just need something, Yeah, and then it all came. For some reason, what happened was that whole belief about our life being a story, because the truth is every single person that I witnessed die, and there were a lot. Some of them still sit on my shoulder,
Mm,
that their story, just the fact of story just kept coming.
yeah, yeah. I celebrate that the writing just came to you. That has not been my experience. I would love to have that. I'm just saying, I would love to have. I mean, I write, I'm good at it. I'm, finishing up my second book, but I can't say it just kept coming and kept coming.
Oh,
So,
well, let me be a little more exact on it then, because what would happen was a piece of paper would come, a one pager would come, this brilliant thought. And then it wouldn't be for whatever days later, another one came, and I had just papers everywhere that didn't tie together. And by the time I'm bringing the book together, I'm literally sorting through these papers that are all over a table, like putting a puzzle together to
yeah.
make the book come together. I'd given myself a deadline, and I work way better with deadlines.
Mhm.
But until that deadline, it's kind of like, honestly, the truth is, I just heard the universe say, if you do not get this finished, you are losing an opportunity I gave you.
Ooh.
Just clearly heard that.
Mm.
And ironically, I finished right before COVID,
Oh,
which would have been great for COVID because people could have had those conversations. But I did a lot of work on Zoom after that.
mhm.
So, and really, people didn't want to talk about dying when exactly we should have been having those conversations.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. That's amazing the way life works like that. And
it's crazy,
good for you for listening.
right? Oh, it was so clear. It was like, okay. There was no denying that one, because you don't get, opportunities. I mean, I'm old enough to say I don't know how many I walked past, but now I'm committed to saying yes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Now that you had the message and you completed the book, you followed it, put all the pieces together of what I would imagine to be like a 5,000 piece puzzle. Remember when we used to have those big puzzles? It
Yeah.
reminds me of that, at least my own process. So I'm probably projecting.
It
But
felt like that.
so
It was awful.
so this mentor figure of sorts gave you this advice about getting it out there. Did you see the results of that or the book? Do you see any benefit to what she said in terms
I
of
would have never imagined, to be perfectly honest with you. It they I belong to a mediation group that focuses on elder and end of life stuff, and I was fortunate enough to meet someone who headed up that department with the ABA, the American Bar Association. He picked up the book and read it without telling me, because he said if I hated it, I didn't want to have to tell you I was reviewing it. But he put it in the ABA's library, and wrote a review on it. And then I got a Kirkus review on it. I mean, the reviews were really good. And then I had something to talk about too, So I didn't. I was told the story I told myself. I use that a lot in conflict. The story I was telling myself about writing a book was, everybody's writing books now, because there's a self-publishing thing. And yeah, I mean, I can't write a book, but it happened. Yeah, it was a big
Yeah,
change.
yeah, that's great to hear. It's great to hear the impact, and I'm hoping that it encourages other people who have written a book and might be at a place where, wherever they are in their own thinking about it. Which reminds me, this podcast, and we talked about this a little bit before, this podcast is for what I call high achieving women. Professional women, responsible in their personal lives, professional lives. And so I invite guests like you who are also high achieving women and have written a book to speak to other high achieving women who have written a book, because we tend to be the people who support other people, but we don't always get the support. And like you just said about your work, I'm not an author. You are an author, but I understand what you were saying. You're not an author. And so they might be thinking the same. So I just want to speak to them from any area of your personal experience or professional experience to any issue revolving that, revolving around this identity of author, or let me put it this way, a person who has written a book, since we don't
Yeah,
always want to claim the title author,
that's right.
just that person.
That's like the guy who wrote Moby Dick or something. He's an author.
Right.
You know what when I was listening to you ask the question, the word mirror came up to my mind, and that is, sometimes the world reflects something to us that is a mirror, right? Sometimes that reflection is not accurate. Sometimes it's someone else's distortions. Sometimes we do that to ourselves when we look in a mirror, right? So I think when people hold up what they think you are and you don't own it, let that go. Whether it's not encouraging your book or judging your capabilities, like let that go. And also the same for you. When you hold up a mirror, be careful what you tell that person in the mirror. I mean, check it for truth. And then know that that's just a part of you, whatever part you're focusing on. There's lots and lots of parts. And I say, talk to yourself like you would talk to your own best friend, right? And persevere. It takes a lot of perseverance to write a book, but it's just a door that's open, and you have no idea what will happen with that door open. But go through it.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I'm feeling inspired myself. Okay. So as you know, the podcast is Leadership Purpose. Now, in your opinion, do you think it's important for you and or others to have a sense of purpose in their work? Or yeah, sense of purpose in their work.
I think it is essential in being human to have a sense of purpose in your work. And it doesn't have to be something big like, working. I mean, my job was life and death, right? But I think if we are doing our best, everything has a purpose. Like everything has a purpose if we see the purpose in it and if we're doing it with purpose. I think that's what motivates us. I think that's what inspires us. I think it's the word hope comes into mind with purpose, but also like joy. And yeah, purpose is super important to me because I have this thing from watching so many people die that at the end of my life, I want to think what I left was good.
Mm,
I had purpose. I built something. I touched something, and we all touch each other. So
yeah.
yeah, I think purpose is good. You can find purpose in a job you don't like. You know what I'm saying? But I think to do it, who wrote something about finding your why?
Yeah,
That's the same thing as your
Simon
purpose.
Sinek. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I think that's important. And
Yeah.
if we forget it or it needs to change, just readdress that because
Yeah.
it's very motivating.
Yeah. And of course I resonate with what you're saying. Of course.
Awesome.
Well, Kimberly Best, like I said in the beginning, I believe you are one of the best. And I appreciate you for taking your time out today. Now, before we tell people where they can get in touch with you, is there something I didn't ask you that you might want to share, or I just didn't think of, or one last thought that's on your mind before we go? Oh, this one more thing.
Yeah, I guess if I had an opportunity, what again just popped into my mind was, to ask people to be kind to one another because we're all going through something, right? Like we all are. So I just would like to plant that seed.
Well, I mean, it's no better closing than that. Thank you, Kimberly Best.
It's been an honor.
It's a joy to have you here. Okay, everyone. And oh, before we do that, Kimberly, where can people be in touch with you? I'm sure they want to get the book and or hear more about your conflict resolution work.
Yeah, the book is on easiest to get on Amazon, I guess. And my practice is Best Conflict Solutions, which is either a really big ego or a great last name. uh, yeah, and you can find me under Best Conflict Solutions. And yeah, feel free to reach out, send me an email.
Okay, best conflict solutions.
Hmm.
Perfect. All right, everyone. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me on social media at Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD. And if you are an author or a person who has written a book and you've been thinking about turning your book into a course, I have a free training over at createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com. That will be a guide to get you on your way. All right. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.